clipping this. Billy, there's been a lot of conversations. We're still staying on the positive track, okay?
Okay.
But there's been a lot of conversations in Bucks media circles, in Bucks fan circles, that winning isn't necessarily the best outcome for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of people have been saying, well, if you look at it objectively, it
Right.
would be best for the Bucks to lose, get a better draft pick, draft their eventual star quarterback or whoever that may be, and bring in a different head coach. And I want your thoughts and opinions on that discussion because I think it isn't as objective as people say. It is certainly something that can be classified as subjective. And I want your thoughts and opinions on it before I give my thoughts and opinions on it because this is something where a lot of people are actually torn on something like this. So, what are your thoughts?
I am never going to be a fan of tanking. I don't like it. I don't like the concept. I just think it's bad for the league. I think it tarnishes the sport, like the integrity of the sport. I just think it defeats the purpose. I don't like it, especially tanking when you have an opportunity to go to the playoffs. It's not as if the Buccaneers are playing meaningless games, and they're just completely out of it. I mean, there are definitely some teams who around the league who have no chance at the playoffs, whether it be a wild card or the division, and the next couple games on their schedule mean nothing other than draft position or good vibes. So the Bucs are not in that position, but even if they were, I just don't like the concept because it's no guarantee that your draft order does not dictate the success of the player you draft. So I don't necessarily think it's a given. The Buccaneers had a number one overall pick not all that long ago, and it was a quarterback, and he's not with the team anymore. He's currently a backup. So I don't see it as a definitive.
I mean, also that didn't result in but one winning season in 5 years.
Right. So I don't see that as a definitive strategic approach. And I just don't, like I said, I think it tarnishes what sports are about. That's not what sports are for. And in the middle of a season, you shouldn't be looking at the next season. Focus on the here, focus on the now. And I don't, it makes me feel a little slimy. I don't like the idea of purposefully losing games or not trying their hardest to win them.
So my thoughts and opinions on this, and I've listened to a lot of different people give their thoughts and opinions on it. And I will say, first thing I want to say is I understand all viewpoints of this. I understand people who want to draft, who want to say, hey, get a different head coach, hey, get a different quarterback. And I'm not even saying that Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles are the answer, right? I mean, ultimately, we don't know. We have no idea. A lot of different things could happen. You never know, right? So to say that that is just 100% one way or the other, that's an opinion at the end of the day. But I will say this. My philosophy for how I always want to see teams is I always want to see a team compete for playoffs, whatever it is. Right? And it's funnily enough just in any thing with that. I'm always going to sit there and have a team or want a team to be competitive, bring in guys to stay competitive rather than just tear it all down and have a tank or a rebuild or whatever you want to call it, right? So when I look around the league and you see teams like not this year per se, but the Tennessee Titans or the Pittsburgh Steelers or those teams that are in the conversation every year. One team, which is the Bucs are playing this week, is the Green Bay Packers. Um,
Sure.
that's something that I feel is better, right? Because some people may say, and hey, if you're not if you're in the middle, you might as well be at the bottom and stuff like that. Like I don't know. For me personally, I do get where people are coming from because why settle for mediocrity? Why settle for being a middle team? But you're always going to be at least in that conversation, right? You're always going to be in that dance of maybe you will make the playoffs. Oh, you might, and if it doesn't work out, then it is what it is. But if you do make it, then you have a chance, right? I'm
Yeah, well, that's the concept of right, Ricky Bobby. If you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, that's true. And look, not going to discredit Ricky Bobby, but it is just a philosophy type of philosophy. It is a subjective and opinion type of thing. In my opinion, I would always take a team that might be 8-9, 9-8, maybe 7-10, and still have chances to make the playoffs every year, than 2 wins, 3 wins,
Yeah,
and
well,
6 wins, let's say.
to double down on kind of what you're saying, the team that to me was meteoric in their tank in recent memory, right, is the New York Jets. And for the New York Jets, that tank went so well that they drafted Zach Wilson and oh, so I don't think the tank is just a guaranteed route to success. And that was in people, you might snicker at Zach Wilson and Mac Jones and Trey Lance, but that was a stacked quarterback draft class. Everybody was obviously Trevor Lawrence was the number one, but behind him, people weren't concerned that those guys weren't going to pan out. And none of them have. So to me, I I just don't. Again, I agree with you. I would rather see any team, a team I'm rooting for, a team I'm not rooting for, compete and play to win. But I just don't. It doesn't even guarantee you. It's not a scientific like formula where you're precisely guaranteed success just because you chose to tank.
And I would say this too, like, I'm not even saying that Todd Bowles, like, is the answer, right? I mean, you know,
You're not?
no, surprisingly not, or that Baker Mayfield is the answer, whatever it is, right? Look, that those are different things, but I think just like for look, and I know it sounds cliche, right? But like for the culture, like
Yeah.
I think as somebody who watches this football team year in and year out, I would much rather sit there and see 7 and 10 years, 8 and 9 years, or 9 and 8 years, and at least be in that conversation for playoffs every year, rather than 3 wins, 4 wins, 6 wins, and it just everything sucks. Because Billy, look, like we've experienced that our entire lives in the 2010s and the
Yeah.
later half of the John Gruden era, and it's not fun. It's not fun to be a team that is constantly at the bottom. Uh, and that's just kind of how it is. Point
And
blank, simple as that. Can you get out of that? Yes, the Bucs did get out of that. So why would you want to go back to the cellar? And that isn't even to say that if you do lose all your games and you get 6 wins, you're gonna suck for the next 5 years or whatever it may be. But I would still rather have a team that at least is keeping you in the playoffs conversation in December football than a team where you're just not you're
yeah,
not in that convo.
and I think you really hit on it when you talked about the culture because players don't want to lose and players definitely don't want to tank. So it becomes that much harder to bring back your own guys if they are a part of something like that, right? Because nobody wants to be. That's not fun. You think it's not fun to watch. I think it's not fun to watch. Imagine being a part of it on the field. That's brutal. So I think that that's definitely part of it too when you talk about having it doesn't even need to be a winning culture, but there is a big gap between a winning culture and a losing culture, right? So if you can keep yourself as a winning culture, well, that's great. That's the Patriots of, the Tom Brady years, the Chiefs. That's a winning culture. There's a lot of gray in the middle, though, between the white and black of a winning and losing culture. And you do not want to be on this end of the spectrum. You can tolerate being somewhere in the middle. And I think that tanking and signing up for a tank is indicative of a losing culture. You're accepting losing, you're going out of your way to embrace it, you're welcoming it. And it almost feels like from an observer, from someone who's rooting for the team, you're kind of selling your soul a little bit because you're it's kind of like you're pulling for your team to not be successful, and
I would
that's
say
just
I would say that that's different. I would say that that's so. Evan Walsh, the Cannon Fire podcast, had said this. He had said that thinking that's best for a team to lose and wanting a team to lose are two very different things.
okay.
And I do
Oh,
agree with that.
yes, that's fair.
I do agree with that.
That's fair.
Now, you can be objective and say that you think it's best for them to lose without saying I want them to lose, right?
Fair.
Two very
Yeah.
different things. But I will say, just me personally, if a team goes 7-10, a team goes 8-9, that at least shows me that this team has some good things to it that you can improve on. Bro, if a team's going like 6 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins, whatever it may be, that team is going to have so many questions and not a lot of answers.
Yes. Yes. And
And
you're gonna lose all your star players.
I would just rather have a team that has more answers at 7 wins,
Yeah.
8 wins. You're like, okay, I see some things that I like here versus 4 or 5 wins where you're like, oh
Well,
god, everything
if
sucks.
you have 7, 8, 9 wins every year, you feel like you're a few pieces away each year. And maybe you could get those pieces. For example, the Bucs, when they plugged in Tom Brady, of course he's the greatest of all time. But the year before, you talked about it, losing record, but not 5 wins or 4 wins, a fringe losing record. You plug in a couple pieces and look what that team can do. So I think that that's kind of the other thing is you always feel like you're right on the cusp. And you have situations like I pulled this quote up before, right? Baker Mayfield was quoted today. This was earlier today, I believe that I read this. He said, I love it here. That's a big reason why I chose to come to this organization, the team, the guys, everybody around. I'm having fun playing football. I'm enjoying that. That's something that if you get a chance to pick or choose, this is a good place to be. Quotes like that don't come out of teams that are tanking. That's a team with a healthy culture, a good locker room. As much as we may knock Todd Bowles, that's a team that likes playing together and likes the group that they're a part of. That doesn't come out of a team that's actively attempting to lose games or is already thinking about next year. That comes out of a team that's trying to win and everybody loves everybody, whether it's for better or worse, and whether they're actually winning games, because technically they got a losing record. But that's a team that is supporting one another and a group that loves each other.
Yeah. And just to kind of, a team that really, you know, kind of thought they were, did some good stuff last year. I think they won 7 games last year and were competitive. And they said, well, hey, they lost out. They got rid of the head coach. They brought in a new offensive head coach, traded up to pick one to get a QB.
Uh,
And now things are not going well. Panthers
no.
fans are sweating right now. So I don't know, man. Like, and that isn't even to say like I'm against drafting a quarterback or whatever it is. I'm just saying like I'd rather have a team be. I would rather see a team, and it's just philosophically, I'd rather have a team be competitive, 7 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins, whatever you want to say, trying to make the playoffs versus saying it's best for this team to lose. Maybe it is, but also maybe it's not. We don't know at the end of the day, right? We don't know. That's an opinion.
You gave a great example too when you talked about the Packers or the Steelers. Those are teams who have seamlessly transitioned from quarterback to quarterback and have never punted on a season. So I think granted, it would be a high bar for the Buccaneers to be a franchise of that caliber, but they do exist. So you should strive for the greatest. I mean, the Packers drafted a quarterback in the middle of competing for titles and then developed him, and look what they've got. Like they're looking like they could be right back in it for years to come. So having that seamless transition is all part of that. The Steelers, again, Kenny Pickett, say what you want, but the Steelers are again in the mix this year, having never given up on a season or punted on a season to draft in the top five and grab a guy. So yeah, I couldn't. We're pretty much, I think, in agreement on it. It's just it is an opinion, like you said, and on top of that, it's even if you, of course, I understand both sides, but even if I were thinking the other way, nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah, I agree 100%.